Guys, Apocalypso here, back with another video. And today I thought I would do something a little bit different and rank all of the Age of Empires 2 wonders based on their looks. Now I made a tier list on tiermaker.com specifically for this purpose, and the link to create your own tier list will be in the description. So I figured it'd be a fun way to cash in on the game with some of my own thoughts about certain aspects of the game, even though I'm a casual player, not really super familiar with various inner workings of the game. But I am a very aesthetic individual, and I appreciate good-looking things. So I figured I would do a tier list for all of the wonders. So I have them in alphabetical order down here. As you can see, there's quite a lot of them. I have past and present versions of different wonders as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Anyway, so Aztecs. I'm going to put them A tier, I think. It looks alright, I suppose, but I think it can be a little awkward in terms of sizing, because, well, see, sometimes it's kind of too big for the size itself, the size of the building. Part of it just kind of spills out, and I find that kind of awkward, and I kind of don't like that aspect of it. I think it would be a lot better if they managed to keep it within the confines of the building grid, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so that's why it's an A tier, because it's good, but it's not that good. Berbers, one of my favorites, but I'd say it's probably above Aztecs, but it's not one of the best. I mean, I like how it looks, but there's not a whole lot that stands out about it. It is a tower, pretty much. It's actually a minaret, an incomplete minaret, and I think that it looks interesting. It's certainly quite imposing, but it's not one of the more dynamic of the wonders out there. So that's why I put it in A tier. Now, Bohemians, putting that in B tier. For the simple fact that the fact that most of it is part of the ground, like the area around the building itself, it makes it look incredibly small. I remember when I looked at it the first time I played the Bohemians, I was like, wow, their wonder looks really small. And I don't think that really makes it look good at all. It's not the worst, but it just doesn't have the pop effect that a wonder should have, in my opinion. Britons. I like this one, actually, even though it's not at all historically accurate. It was a building in Germany built by the Franxx, and yet the Britons have it, which is pretty strange. Anyway, I like this building, actually, because I like the way it looks. They actually got a new wonder in DE, which I will be. It's the next thing I'm ranking, but anyway, I like the look of it a lot. I think it has a lot of great elements like the stained glass windows and the shrubbery. I can't really see it. I can't really see too much detail from the tiny thumbnail, but for what I remember, it has some shrubbery, and the stained glass windows I really like about it. And that's about it for the original Britain's Wonder. But for the new Britain's Wonder, I'm giving it B tier. It just doesn't stand out as much, in my opinion. I feel like it. They changed it to make it more historically accurate, which I like. But I also feel that they could have picked something that was a bit more imposing. And I feel that the new Britain's Wonder just doesn't look as good as the old one. So that's why it's in B tier. Okay, Bulgarians, I'm putting this in S tier. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. It has a beautiful, it has one big dome and multiple smaller ones, and it just has some really amazing looking stonework. This thing looks just so great. I love it. Burgundians, I'm putting this I will put this in B tier. I'm actually putting it, yeah. I just feel like the building is just too gray. It doesn't really stand out to me. I don't really think it kind of blends in too much with everything else. It doesn't really look any different. If you can see, the Burgundian New British Wonder and the Bohemian Wonders, they all look basically the same in terms of color scheme and architectural style. And that's not a great thing for Wonder. Wonders should be distinctive. And I think the Burgundian Wonder, even though it's unique in terms of what it actually is, it's a town hall instead of a church or something else, like most European civilizations have. It doesn't stand out enough. So that's why it is in B tier. And wow, I've already been recording for 8 minutes. Anyway, I really gotta speed this up. But whatever. Burmese, I'm gonna put this in A tier. Now it is basically one color, but it stands out enough that I think it's not a problem, and it stands out from the rest of a Burmese city. And I really like. There was actually a period of time where I was really interested in Southeast Asia, mostly Cambodia, like the Khmer Empire. But there was a time I was looking at the Burmese too, so I really like this Burmese Wonder based on that. But I think it's pretty great on its own. Actually, it looks pretty good. Byzantine Wonder, C, no, B. I was gonna. Great. I think I'll put it in C tier. It's too bland. I don't think it looks that great, to be honest. It's all tan and black, and that's basically the only color it is, and I don't like that. I don't think that looks good. It fits in with the rest of a Byzantine city prior to DE, but it looks too bad. It just doesn't stand out enough. Actually, I'm gonna put it in D tier because DE, for some reason, gave the Byzantines the Mediterranean architecture, which does not really fit the Wonder. So now the Wonder just stands out like a whole lot, and it looks awful as a result. So it is actually going to be in D tier for me. I was going to be generous and put it in C tier, but it's in D tier because of the mismatch with the architecture in DE. Alright, so Celts are next. And, well, Celts, I'm putting them in A tier. Actually, I'm going to put it ahead of the the original British Wonder. I really like how it looks. I think it's really cool. It's like a neat mixture of a castle and a cathedral. Actually, it kind of served as both at one point, if I remember correctly. And I just really like the stained glass that it has, and I just think it looks really good. I have a fondness for stained glass, and I really like buildings with stained glass utilized well, and that utilizes the stained glass really well. So next is the Chinese. I think I'm gonna put the Chinese in A tier. In front, where specifically in A tier? I am not sure. I'll put it. There we go. I feel like this is it is a very distinctive building. It is like one of the most famous buildings in China, other than the Great Wall of China, of course. And I feel like the fame factor for it just makes it very special, and I just think it looks very distinctive. It's a great demonstration of the Asian architecture, and I think that makes it look really good. I really think wonders should be perfect demonstrations of the architecture set that they're part of, which is also why the Byzantine Wonder is at the bottom, because it's not a good demonstration of the architecture anymore. But anyway, so the Chinese architecture is a good demonstration of the Asian architecture, so I'm putting it in A tier. It's not one of my favorites, but it does look good. Now for Cumans. I don't like this Wonder at all. I think it's really ugly. It looks terrible. The idea was that the Cumans settled a Khazar fortress, which is what they actually did. They actually did take over an abandoned Khazar fortress, and that's the basis for the Wonder. But it just doesn't look good. The execution is terrible, in my opinion. I don't like how it looks at all. I just think it looks really bad. And that's why it's at the bottom. Ethiopians I'm putting in C tier. Doesn't look that bad, but it's not super distinctive. It's where the Byzantine Wonder would be if the Byzantines still had the Middle Eastern architecture, because at least the Ethiopian Wonder fits in with the African buildings. So it's going to be in C tier. Now for the Franxx, I am going to put it in S tier, because it is a fantastic demonstration of Gothic cathedrals. I'm not sure. There's a lot of debate on the wiki about which Gothic cathedral it's supposed to be, specifically. Some people think it's supposed to be Short Cathedral. Others think it's supposed to be that one cathedral in Prague. I think that might just be called Cathedral of Prague. I can't remember Prague Cathedral, I can't remember. There's debate raging about whether it's Chart or the Prague Cathedral. It's probably Chart, because Prague is not owned by the French anymore. I'm not even sure it was owned by the Franxx during the time of the Middle Ages, but that's beside the point. Anyway, Frank Wonder just looks really good. It's a great demonstration of Gothic cathedral architecture. So that's why it's an S tier. So the Goths. Speaking of Gothic architecture, this is literal Gothic architecture. But I'm not sure which tier to put it in. I will put it in C tier, ahead of the Ethiopian Wonder. And that's I like how they scaled up the actual building, because the actual building is quite small. So they scaled up the building in order to fit into the Wonder size. Normally they have to scale buildings down, but this one they actually scaled up, and they somehow managed to not make it look bad when they scaled it up. They actually made it look a lot better, because it has actual shrubbery in it and stuff. The only part I don't like is DE kind of added these arches at the top, and I just think they look really terrible. I don't know why they added them there. The building was fine as it was, so I don't get why they added it. It just looks terrible. Huns. I am putting this ahead of the Byzantines and Cumans. Reason being, it fits the Huns in terms of them being a raider culture that was around during the Roman Empire, but it's just kind of contrived. I mean, they had to give the Huns something, but the Huns weren't really known for building anything, so they just gave them a building that was destroyed. Hey, let's give them a Roman building that's sacked. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it does make sense, but it just feels kind of random for a Wonder. But I mean, what else could they do? I'm not really faulting them, but I just think it looks pretty good as it is. But the concept is just kind of strange. Now the Incas. I am putting them in the bottom of C tier. The reason for that is the Wonder actually looks pretty good in the HD version, but they added weird mountains to it in DE, and I just think that makes it look terrible. And when the Wonder itself collapses, the mountains crumble like they're hollow inside, and that just makes no sense at all. And I don't know why they had to change it like that. The Wonder is like way bigger than it needs to be. I think the original Wonder was fine. So if they just made that high definition, then would have been golden. Would have been great. But instead they had to add all that weird mountain stuff and just ruin the whole look. So that's why it's in C tier. The original Indian Wonder. I am putting this in A tier. Right before the Berber Wonder. Originally, the Indians had the Middle Eastern architecture, and that was the Wonder they had when they had that architecture. And I think I really like it's a great translation of the original building. Of course, it's scaled down, but I just really like the style of it. It looks really good. I like the domes. I just think the whole composition is very well put together, especially considering how accurate it is to the original building. So I really like that. Alright, so the original Indian, or not the original Indian Wonder, that was the original Indian Wonder. The new Indian Wonder I am putting in B tier. Above, I think, above all the others, it looks pretty good on its own, but I just prefer the original Indian Wonder much more. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with the new building, but I just prefer the original building so much. Because I really like the Middle Eastern style of architecture. I especially like that building, so the new one just kind of felt shoehorned in because they needed something else. It's not really clear which building it's supposed to represent either, so I just think that makes it kind of awkward because it's not actually clear what building it is. But anyway, Italian Wonder, I am putting it in S tier, right next to the Franxx Wonder. It's sort of a similar concept, except it kind of exchanges verticality for horizontality. I don't know if that's a word, but it's sort of like a Romanesque building. My dad would know about the differences between all that because he's an architect. That's how I got this interest anyway. So I think this building is like a Romanesque building. It got a minor change in DE, but I think it, in all things considered, it doesn't look that much different. But I really like the rose window that they just kind of cribbed from the Franxx Wonder when they made the Italian Wonder, because the Italian Wonder originally was made by modders, and they reused a lot of stuff because, well, they weren't professional, so they reused a lot of assets from other buildings, such the orb thing at the top, not orb, it's something at the top of the steeple up on the right side of the building is taken from the Spanish Wonder. But I don't want to get too into specifics, but that's why it's an S tier, because I just think it looks really good. So the Japanese Wonder, going with Japanese Wonder, let's see. I think I'm going to put it in A tier, behind the Chinese Wonder. It's more typical of Japanese architecture, specifically, than just Asian architecture overall. The Chinese architecture, the Chinese Wonder, specifically resembles Chinese architecture, which, well, that makes sense. So the Japanese Wonder sort of demonstrates Japanese architecture, and that's the way Wonder should be. But I just don't like the look of it as much as the Chinese Wonder, so that's why it's lower. So so Khmer Wonder is an S tier. This is one of my favorites, mostly because of the fact that I love the Khmer and the Khmer Empire. And Angkor Wat is a very interesting building that I think looks really good in real life. I haven't actually seen it in real life, but it does look like it is really good. And I think they did a great job of translating a very wide and spacious building into a very small space, relatively speaking, while keeping the mountainous quality to the building. And I think that isn't easy to do. They could have easily messed it up, but they managed to do it just right, and that's why I like it. It's a very faithful recreation. Koreans, I don't like this one. I think this one is just an inferior version of both the Chinese and the Japanese wonders. And I don't like how it looks. It's just, well, I don't really need to go into too much detail, but I just think it looks pretty bad. Because it just feels very thrown together. I feel like the outer ring doesn't really mesh too well with the actual pagoda itself. And I just think it looks not that great. Now the Lithuanian Wonder. I'm gonna put that in A tier. It's a so it's a castle. Unlike the other, unlike the Bulgarians who have a church as their wonder, the Lithuanians have a castle, and I think it looks good, but it's lacking a little bit of color and something to make it pop. So it just kind of looks like a generic castle, more or less. I mean, it's not a generic castle. It doesn't really look like a generic castle, but it looks more like a generic castle than most of the other castle wonders. So it's something. Now for the Magyar Wonder. Now this, talk about generic castle. I'll put this in A tier as well, as it's actually one of my favorites. Actually, I'll put it above the Lithuanian one because I like it more than the Lithuanian one. But I only like the original HD version and not the new version, because the new version just feels like they scaled it down too much. They were trying to get more of the building, and as a result they had to scale it down, and I don't think that was a good move. I think they just should have remade it and made it look nicer without changing the layout of the building, because I think the original captured just enough of the actual building to get the idea while still fitting within the space without really making anything too scaled down. The new one just is too scaled down. So for the Malay, I am putting it in B tier because where am I gonna put it in the B tier though? I'll put it there. It's not bad looking, but it's just kind of mediocre. I don't really like it. It's just, it doesn't stand out as much. The building itself in real life is not that large compared to the Khmer Wonder. The Khmer Wonder is actually really big in real life, so it kind of gives it the imposing sense that it should have. But Malay Wonder is just it isn't as imposing in real life, so the building itself is not as imposing in the game either. Alright, so the Malayans, I'm gonna put that in A tier, I think. Yeah, that looks about right. Even though it's anachronistic, because the building itself as it looks today is from the 19th century, I believe. I actually like how the building looks in the game. I think it's a great demonstration of the typical African mud architecture that the game employs, even if it's not really super accurate. Like the architecture set itself isn't that accurate. The Wonder is a great demonstration of the architecture style, and as I said before, wonders should reflect the architecture styles they belong to, and that one definitely does. Alright, so the Mayans, we're getting close to the end here. Mayans, I'm gonna put them in S tier, above the Khmer Wonder, actually. Because, actually, I'm gonna do something crazy. I'm going to put it in the top. Because I do really like this wonder. I think it looks really good. The actual building itself looks really distinctive. And I think this is, it just looks, this wonder looks really balanced. It's a great recreation of the Temple of Tikal, the first Temple of Tikal. And I think that surrounded by jungle, it just feels like you're really in the action as the Mayans. And I just sort of get that Mayans vibe from the building. And I just think it's one of the better designed wonders in the game. We'll see if any of them end up topping it, but who knows. Mongols. So Mongols, I'm gonna put them in C tier, to be honest. Because where do I put it? Yeah, sure. It's a tent. That's literally what it is. It is the Great Tent of Genghis Khan from medieval illustrations. And that's just kind of a weird thing. It's sort of like the Mongols were sort of like the precursor to the Huns in many ways. Not historically, of course, but in the game they're like the precursor to the Huns because they didn't really build buildings for the most part. So they just sort of had to come up with something. But at least they actually had actual reference material to work with, because the Mongols were a major force. So they just sort of came up with this tent from actual primary sources and illustrations. And I think the way that they made it larger than it is in the illustrations, while still keeping it relatively primitive looking, I think that's hard to do, but it's still kind of, it's not one of the more imposing ones, but it is definitely unique. Now for the Persians. This is one of my favorite wonders, admittedly. Sure, I'll put it, yeah. It's one of my favorite wonders. I think it's the way they scaled it down, but still kept the arch to be a significant part of the building. That's a really great quality about it. And I like the fountain out in front, and I just think this whole thing just looks really good in general. I'll leave it at that, I guess. Poles. I'll put it in S tier 2, right below the Mayans. This one is one of the more impressive wonders. It's certainly very detailed, just like the building it's based on. Wawel Cathedral. I probably totally butchered that pronunciation. But the building is very impressive in real life, and it's impressive in the game too. It has a lot of various elements to it that makes it very easy to look at for a long time, because it's just very impressive in general, and that's why I like it. Portuguese Wonder, I'll put it in A tier. So, I like this one. I think it looks really good. It's certainly distinctive. But unfortunately, the DE update kind of removed the water from the building, which I think kind of took away some of the distinctive elements to it. But the building still looks pretty good at DE, so I can't really complain. Now Saracens, I'll put it there, behind the Berbers. Actually, the Saracens represented the Berbers in some of the old Age of Kings scenarios, I think. Anyway, so I think this looks really good. It looks even better in DE because they add some shrubbery, some foliage around the inside, and that makes it look good. I just really like the spire going up and the fence around it. I just think it's a very well composed wonder. It's one of the better designed ones in my opinion. Now Sicilians. This is also one of my favorites. I really like that one. It looks really impressive, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. It is a gorgeous building. Very, very beautiful. It doesn't have any stained glass, but it is still very impressive. Alright, so come to the Slavs. I think I'll put it in A tier. It's one of my favorites, but it's not one of the best in my opinion. It looks very distinctive, it's very impressive, but I think they should have gone with Dormition Cathedral, especially since that one they picked, which is called Kitsipogost. It is anachronistic. It was built after the Age of Empires 2 timeline, so they should have gone with Dormition Cathedral, which is already fully modeled in the game, and I think they just should have gone with that. But what we have still looks quite good. Now the Spanish Wonder, I'll put it in B tier, sure. I don't think it really fits in with either architecture that the Spanish have had, that being Western European and then Mediterranean. But that's okay because it wasn't actually built by the Spanish, it was built by the Moors. I'm not sure why they went with it, but it's alright. I like the palm trees around the building itself, and I think that really gives it some points in its favor. If those weren't there, I probably would not rank it as highly. So now we're coming to the final 5. So Tatar's definitely one of my favorites. I think it looks very distinctive. It has a very round. It is round. It doesn't just have round qualities. It is actually round. So that's what I like. It kind of reminds me of an amphitheater, the Colosseum. Actually, they do have amphitheaters and Colosseum and the Colosseum in the scenario editor, but they don't really look that much like it. But I do like this building. I just think it looks really good. I can't really explain beyond that. Teutons, I'm putting it in C tier. I'm sorry. I don't like it. I don't think it looks good. It's kind of ugly. It's just like 2 colors, and I don't think it looks good. Sorry. Turks. I'm putting them in D tier because I think they look. The Turk Wonder looks actually worse than the Byzantine Wonder. Even though they look very similar, I don't think neither of them is particularly good. So that's kind of why I don't like it. It's just very bland. So that's what I'm going with. So Vietnamese, it's the second to last. I'm putting in S tier, I think. I'm actually going to put it very high up because I think it looks really great. Sure, I'll put it right there. It's a great demonstration of Sino-Vietnamese architecture. That is, Vietnamese architecture inspired by Chinese architecture. And I think even though they had this wonder back when they had the Southeast Asian architecture, they didn't actually change it when they got the East Asian architecture in DE, which I think is a great testament to how it just sort of fit in to kind of either style. With the roof color for the Southeast Asian, it was a little out of place with the Southeast Asian architecture, but with the roof color especially, it fit in. But it definitely, it fits, it's more in line with the East Asian architecture style-wise, so that's what it, I like it. So now the Vikings, I'm putting in S tier. Anybody who knows me should have seen this coming because I have Viking heritage and I like Viking culture. I like stave churches. And this is a fantastic representation of a stave church. Stave churches are a very interesting part of Viking culture that actually came into existence after they stopped being Vikings, but whatever. So it topped the Mayans for me because it just I'm just super biased towards it. And yeah, so that's pretty much my tier list. So let me know how like if you agree with it or not, what you think of it. And that's basically it. So I'll see you later. And let me know what your favorite wonder is. So anyway, bye.